Continue with the 21st chapter of the book of Chronicles, Divrei Hayamim, which corresponds to the final chapter of the book of Shmuel. Order a little bit differently. After the final chapter of the book of Shmuel and the first chapter of the book of Kings, David is old and sick, but this book follows a different, perhaps a more chronological sequence than the book of Shmuel. Let's look at the chapter. Vayamod Satan al Yisrael, vayaset et David limnotet Yisrael. Satan arose against Israel and incited David to number Israel. This is David in the book of Shmuel. He takes a census. It is a very bad thing that he does. But here we have this mention of a Satan. In the book of Shmuel, it's a little different. It talks about God. And here it's Satan who is doing it, less God. In both the stories, it almost looks like David's free choice is somewhat limited. So this is more in line with sort of Second Temple period and thinking where sin is moved a little further away from God. Vayomer David al Yoav el Saream l'chus bruach Yisrael mi Beersheva v'adan v'aviu elai ve'edat Mispram. Go and count the people of Israel from Beersheva, that is the south, to Dan, that is in the north, and bring me information as to their number. Vayomer Yoav Yosef Adonai alamo kahem mea pamim alo Adoni amelech kulam la'Adoni la'avadim lama yivakesh zot Adoni. Lama yela ashma Yisrael, and like in the book of Shmuel, here Yoav disagrees with the idea of David. And we've talked about this. Yoav is very defensive of David. Yoav is the one who has Uriah killed. Yoav is very, very concerned about the crown. And so here, what does Yoav say? He's trying to tell David not to do it, and he says, your king, the people should increase 100-fold. My lord, the king, they're all your subjects. Why do you want this? Why should it be a cause for guilt for Israel? There's something wrong with this doing. Dvar HaMelech chazak al Yoav vayetze Yoav vaytalchu b'chol Yisrael vayavo Yerushalayim. So, but the king was very, very strong. Same word is used vayachazak in Shmuel, and Yoav goes out, and he travels all over Israel, counting the people. Presumably, then he comes back to Yerushalayim. Vayiten Yoav et mispar mifkada amel David vayichol Yisrael elef alafim umea elef ish sholef cherev v'Yehuda arba meot v'shivim elef ish sholef cherev. And so he gives the number. All of Israel comprised 1,100,000 ready to draw the sword, while in Judah there were 470,000 men ready to draw the sword. And in verse 6, he did not record the tribe of Levi and the tribe of Binyamin, because the king's command had become repugnant to Yoav. It was enough for him. He didn't agree with this command. He disputed David on doing it in the first place, and here he stops in the middle. The numbers are a little bit different in the book of Shmuel. In the book of Shmuel, we have 800,000 Israel and 500,000 from Yehuda. Here it's 1.1 and 470. Why the change? I don't know. Also, the idea that Levi and Binyamin were not counted is also not in the book of Shmuel. What is God's reaction? God was displeased, and he struck Israel. Israel was going to suffer as a result of this counting. We talked about it in the book of Shmuel. It seems to be the issue with it is it's a count about David's power, how many people he has, how strong he is, who he controls, and it's sort of saying, I'm in power, I'm strong, I have all these places, all of these people. We know the king is supposed to have checks on his powers. We talked about in previous chapters, and certainly back in the book of Dvarim, where it talks about not to have two horses and not to have too many wives and not too much gold and silver, etc., etc. Continuing in Pasuk Chet, Vayomer David el Elohim chatati mod asher asiti et davar zev v'ata haver nat avon avdecha ki niskalti mod. David said to God, I've sinned grievously in having done this thing. Please remit the guilt of your servant, for I have acted foolishly. We have a similar thing again, same story. David admits his sin, and God's response is, Vayadaber Adonai el Gad Choseh David Lemor. Yesterday's chapter, what was missing was Natan coming after David sleeps with Bathsheba. Here we have not Natan, but the other prophet of the time, Gad. I pronounce it Gad and not God. God comes with the words of God to David and says, Lech v'dibarta el David Lemor kol mar Adonai. Shalosh ani noteh alecha b'char lecha achat mehena ve'eseh lach. So God, go and tell David, you have 3 different choices to pick out of punishments. And what are those 3 choices? Vayavo Gad el David, Vayomer lo ko amar Adonai kabel lach. And God came to David and said to him, select for yourself, and here are the following 3 possibilities. Im shalosh shanim ra'av, im shlosha chadashim nispam mipnei tzarecha v'cherev oivecha lima seget, v'im shloshet yamim cherev Adonai v'dever be'eretz umalach Adonai mashchit b'chol gvul Yisrael v'ata roeh ma'ashivet sholchi davar. So here are the choices: a 3-year famine, or you be swept away for 3 months before your enemies, the sword overtaking you, or 3 days of the sword of God, some sort of pestilence, some sort of plague in the land. The angel of God will wreak destruction throughout the territory of Israel. So now consider and think about which one of those 3 you want. In the book of Shmuel, it's not 3 years, 3, 3, 3. It's actually 7 years of famine, and then the other ones are 3. Vayomer David al Gad, Tsar li ma'od, epla na biad Adonai ki rabim rachamav ma'od, uviad Adam al epol. We have nearly the same pasuk in the book of Shmuel. It says nifla instead of epla, and it says epola instead of epol. The verse begins the daily nefilat apayim, the daily tachnun that's done in the after Shmona Esrei, or after Chazar Lashatz and Shachris and Mincha. David turns to God and he says to God, and he says, I guess he's turning to God also, I am distressed. Allow me to fall before God because his mercy is great, and not to fall into the hands of man. God is much more powerful, but David hopes that God will not be fully vengeful and angry. Vayitein Adonai dever b'Yisrael vayipom Yisrael shivim elef ish. And there is this plague, this pestilence, and 70,000 men from the tribe, from Israel, from the different tribes. It doesn't exactly say which tribes it is, but 70,000 people from Israel die. Vayishlach Elohim malach l'Yerushalayim lashchita kashchit ra'a Adonai vaynicheim al hara vayomer lamalach hamashchit rabba taheref yadecha umalach Adonai omeid im goren arnon hayevusi. God sent an angel to Jerusalem to destroy it after, presumably already the 70,000 are already dead. But as he was about to wreak destruction, God saw and renounced further punishment and said to the angel, enough, hold your hand back. And the angel was there. He was next to the threshing floor of somebody named Arnon HaYevusi. Now, we have again similar thing in the book of Shmuel, basically the same thing. Vayisa David neinav vayaret malach Adonai omeid beina aretz uvein hashamayim v'charbo shlufa biyado netuya al Yerushalayim. Vayipol David vazkenim mechusim basakim al pneim. David looked up and he saw the angel of God standing between the heaven and earth, with its drawn sword in its hand directed against Jerusalem. David and the elders, covered in sackcloth, threw themselves on their faces. Here it's clearer that he sees the angel, and the image of the angel is more noticeable. We may know this verse, v'charbo shlufa biyado netuya al Yerushalayim, is mentioned in the Haggadah. It's used in the Haggadah when we are explaining the plagues, specifically the Zroa Nituya, the outstretched arm. So this was, as it's described here, an outstretched arm. And so it talks about that was the cherev, that was the sword that destroyed Egypt. And so we see here, this is a similar, it's a plague, a dever, like we had dever in Egypt. We have a plague here against Bnei Yisrael, and David and the elders are with him. Vayomer David el Elohim alo ani amarti lemnot ba'am v'anihu asher chatati v'hareya hareoti ve'ele hatzon me'asu Adonai Elohai tihina yadcha bi uvevet avi uvamcha lo lamagefa. And David said to God, I was the sinner. I was the one who ordered the counting of the people. I alone am guilty. I have caused this harm. The sheep, what have they done? Let your hand fall upon me and my father's house, and let not the people be plagued. And here we see it's a very beautiful admission that David has. It's similar in the book of Shmuel. It says, Anochi chatati v'anochi haviti ve'elatzon ma'asu tini yadcha Biu Veit Avi. It's a little bit elongated here, but it's really David admitting his sin, which is one of the hallmarks of his life. Umalach Adonai Amar El Gad Lemor LeDavid Ki Ale David Lakim Mizbeach Adonai Begorin Arnan Hayusi. The angel of the Lord told God to inform David that David should go and set up an altar at the threshing floor of Arnon Ha-Yevusi. And so the name is slightly different. And here his name is Arnon, and in the book of Shmuel, sometimes it's Aravna, Arnona. There are different names that are given, but all basically the same. You can see how a vav might become a nun. Vayal David b'dvar Gad asher diber b'shem Adonai, and David goes up as God had told him in the name of God. Vayashav Arnon. We're in verse 20. Vayaret hamalach v'arba banav imo mitchabim v'Arnon dash chitim. Arnon too saw the angel. His 4 sons were with him, hid themselves, while Arnon kept on threshing the wheat. Arnon doesn't seem in this account to be scared. He's out on the threshing floor. Vayavo David el Arnon vayabeit Arnon vayaret David vayetze min hagoron vayishtachu David apayim arza. David came towards Arnon, and when Arnon saw him, he bowed down. Right, he came off the threshing floor and bowed low to David with his face to the ground. Similar description we have in the book of Shmuel, basically the same. Vayomer David al Arnon tna li makom hagoren vevna vo mizbeach laDonai bekesef malei tnehu li latatzer magefa me'al ha'am. And David says to Arnon, give me sell me the site of the threshing floor that I can build an altar on it. Sell it to me for full price, so the plague against the people will stop. So it will no longer happen. Interestingly, in this verse, we have the words bekesef malei, sell it to me for full price, which is the same words that are used by Avraham with Ephron Hachiti when he's looking for a burial place for his wife Sarah. And there's a similar notion here. If you really want something, you have to be willing to spend money on it. Something that you love, something that you care about, you'll spend your money on. Something that you don't care about, you won't spend your money on. And so David here is in this retelling is echoing the words of Avram. Bekesef malei, I will pay the full amount. I'll pay whatever it is. It doesn't matter my money, because I need to stop this plague. Vayomer Anon el David kach lach. Arnon said to David, take it. Let my lord and king do whatever he sees fit. I'll donate ox for burnt offerings and the boards for wood and wheat for meal offering. I donate all of it. Vayomer Hamelech David la'Arnon, lo, ki kano ekne bekesef malei ki lo eseh asher lach la'Adonai ba'alot olam chinam. And David said, no, I'm going to buy them. Don't give me a king's discount, a governmental a subsidy. I cannot present to God what belongs to you, or a sacrifice or burnt offering that has cost me nothing. I have to have, I don't have skin in the game, but I at least need to make it come from me. Vayitain David la'Arnon b'makom shiklei zahav mishkal sheish me'od. And David paid Arnon for the site 600 shekels worth of gold. Number is slightly different in the book of Shmuel. There it's 50 shekels of silver. Who knows if it's just been sort of reinterpreted or a new amount to make it more relevant to the people at the time of the Second Temple. Vayiven sham David mizbeach la'Adonai vayal alot u'shlamim vayikra la'Adonai v'yaneu va'esh min hashamayim al mizbach holah. David built there an altar to God and brought sacrifices, burnt offerings, and he called out to God, who answered him with a fire from the heaven on the altar of burnt offerings. A fire came down onto the altar. And that's something we don't have in the book of Shmuel. We just say we have there God answering him, and in the same verse, God responds, and the plague ends. But here we have also this idea of the fire coming down, which is significant. We'll see a slight difference going forward, or at least the emphasis. Vayomer Adonai lemalach vayashav charbo el nidada. And so God said to the angel, and the angel returned his sword into its sheath. Ba'etahi berot David kianahu Adonai begorin arnan hayavusi vayisbach sham. At that time, when David saw that the Lord answered him on the threshing floor of Arnon, when he sacrificed there, Umishkan Adonai asher asa Moshe bamidbar mizbach olah ba'etahi b'bama b'gavon, and the tabernacle of God, which Moses made in the wilderness, and the altar of burnt offerings were at the time in the shrine in Givon. And David was unable to go to it to worship God because he was terrified by the sword of the angel of God. David had, and this chapter really stops in the middle of the story, right? It's where it's the light bulb moment in David's head. David should have been able to go to the Mishkan, excuse me, of Moshe, to and to the altar there, but David was not able to do that. And it's sort of the light bulb moment for David, where David realizes this is the place for the house. This is the place for the temple. This is the place where I am not allowed to, but my son will be allowed to build. This is a place where God, if you offer sacrifices, forgives and stops plagues for Bnei Yisrael. So we have this chapter very, very similar to the basically the 24th chapter, some slight discrepancies here. It's Satan who really incites David there. God is sort of upset. The numbers are a little bit different. Levi and Binyamin are not counted. 3 years of famine, 7 years of famine. And here, David really sees the angel more, and the fire from heaven there, it's less emphasized. And here, David looks almost a little bit worse in terms of the sin, but David's role in terms of his admitting of his sin, of his mistake, of his that he made a mistake, really demonstrates and shows David accepting moral responsibility, David as a model of tshuva, of repentance, and it strengthens in a greater, more blatant and obvious way the reason why this location is chosen as the site of the future Beit HaMikdash. We'll see that in the very next chapter. David is going to say, he's going to reveal his idea. One notion, just going back to the book of Shmuel, it doesn't seem like this is an event that happens at the end of David's life, like it's presented in the book of Shmuel. But in the book of Shmuel, it's a literary sort of bookend of the book. The book starts with the Mishkan in Shiloh, the stories of Shmuel, the stories of Eli, the story of the destruction of the Mishkan because of Eli's sons and their wickedness. Right? The book starts with God, in a sense, being exiled from this Mishkan. We have no temple, we have no place to come to God. And so the book of Shmuel concludes with David finding the site where the Beit HaMikdash will be built. And so that's why perhaps there it's toward the end of the book, even though it's not necessarily the end of his life. Here, it's more in the middle of the stories. We'll have many more stories about King David in the coming chapters, but that's why it's done perhaps there and here somewhat differently in terms of the order and some of the emphasis.